right, guys, it's paranormal time again. I'm Ryan.
And I'm Brittany.
And this is Pure Malice.
Into the paranormal. When true crime isn't enough, we cross into the unknown.
Thanks for joining us for another episode.
Just a quick reminder, if you like the show and you want us to keep giving you more, make sure to follow us on Spotify. Help us grow by following our Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok pages and our YouTube channel. Sharing is caring.
Woo!
So send our stuff to anyone you think might enjoy the show.
All right. So we've had some family Christmas movie nights over at Brittany's a couple times so far, and we have one more left.
The Grinch.
Yep. Probably everyone's favorite one.
Yeah. And now the problem is, which version are we going to watch?
The Jim Carrey one.
No. So has already requested it's the cartoon one and not the one with the real people because Jim Carrey scares her.
Oh, okay. Well, so Kat and I were asking each other which one it was going to be, and I was like, it's going to be Jim Carrey. She's like, right, because that's the invitation.
Well, that's the one I was going to go with,
Oh.
and then so I made it very clear that that is not the one we're watching because he is a scary Grinch and it scares her.
Oh, well, anyways. All right, so let's get into it. Britt, start us off.
So this week we're covering the Manhattan Alien Abduction.
Ugh.
Aliens are very controversial. In my opinion, it's very controversial because you have the people that believe in the paranormal things, right?
Right.
But they don't necessarily believe in aliens, or they don't categorize them as paranormal.
They are paranormal.
They're not paranormal in the,
Traditional, like, spooky, creepy.
well, in the way that the world has perceived the definition of paranormal.
Yeah.
But if you look at the actual definition, para, beside, outside, the normal,
So then it is.
it's paranormal.
Okay.
But
Thank
you know,
you.
I'm
Thank
very
you.
black and white, so paranormal. So this case starts early May of 1989. A UFO investigator, also known as the
Abductologist.
abductor, I just think of muscles. Okay. Abductologist. All of the, okay. So we've already said it correctly once, so we'll move on.
Yeah.
Specifically, his name is Bud Hopkins. So he received a letter in the mail from Linda Napolitano.
Yeah.
Napolitano. So she was a local woman who lived in Lower Manhattan with her two kids. Bud had never heard of or met Linda previously, but it wasn't that weird for him to get letters from strangers out of the blue because he was a very outspoken believer in extraterrestrials. Extra. I'm having trouble talking today.
That's all right.
He was a very outspoken believer in extraterrestrials, and he was a known investigator of claims of alien abductions. And 2 years before this, he had published a book called The Incredible Visitations at Cobley Woods, which made him a regular at conventions and on talk shows. So if somebody was looking up anything alien related, his name would most likely pop up. So Linda's letter to Bud was a lot like the others he had received in the past, especially since his book had been published. She wrote to him and said, I'm a 41-year-old wife, mother of two, and I came across your book, Intruders, sometime last year on a shopping trip. I read only a portion of it and then I had to put it down. I felt overwhelmed with fear because pieces of a 22-year-old puzzle may have finally come together. I don't know. I hope I'm wrong. She went on to explain that since she was a kid living at home, she would regularly experience what she originally thought were night terrors. She said at night in my bed, my body became numb, too heavy to move. Whenever the sensation would come over her, she'd close her eyes tightly and wait for it to pass. But she always had this strange feeling that someone was there.
Yeah.
A shrouded or hooded person. So she went to her parents, who told her that she was just having bad dreams. She continued to have these same experiences off and on for the next 5 years. She even went to see a doctor later on because she thought she may have been having some sort of medical issue that may be causing the numbness, but after an examination, they determined she was in perfect health. She went on to marry her husband when she was 25, and according to her, this is when the experiences started to taper off until they completely stopped. But one day, a few months after she had had her first baby, she was looking at a picture of herself and noticed that her nose looked crooked, like it had been broken at some point. She said she looked in the mirror and touched the area of her nose, and there was a small bump. This discovery caused her to panic. She said that she hadn't had any health problems since going to the doctor a few years earlier, and to her, it felt like everything had been going well for a while now. So she immediately scheduled an appointment with a specialist to see if she needed to be concerned with this bump, and luckily she was able to get in and be seen within a couple of weeks. She told Bud that the doctor examined the inside and outside of her nose, which was quite embarrassing, and that she was incredibly relieved. The doctor told her that the bump was just cartilage that built up after whatever surgery she had had on her nose, and there was nothing to worry about. But that relief quickly turned to confusion because she had never had any kind of surgery on her nose. Or at all, for that matter. So it just didn't make any sense.
Yeah.
So she said the doctor looked at her kind of funny and said she definitely had had surgery, and instead of going back and forth, she just said, okay, thanks, and left. In her letter to Bud, she laid out experiences like these and pretty much told him that she had come to the conclusion that she was dealing with some kind of contact with extraterrestrials and that she hoped he would be able to help her. Later, Bud said that every detail that Linda recalled in her 22-year saga of mysterious and disturbing events was familiar to him from other UFO abduction cases. In his interviews with other abductees, the interviewees had described having long, thin needles or metallic probes inserted into their bodies, and they felt that they had undergone some sort of exploratory surgery. So after reading Linda's letter, Bud wasted no time reaching out to her to say that they needed to meet in person about this. A few days after they spoke on the phone, Linda arrived in Bud's office where they met face to face for the first time. While there, she admitted that she only read to page 36 of his book, and she stopped at the part where Bud talked about two abductees having, quote, unquote, a tiny ball only 2 or 3 millimeters in diameter surgically implanted into their brains through the nasal cavity. I'm sorry, but, like, I believe in aliens.
I do too.
But these are the stories, like, you can tell me those stories all day, and I'll believe them.
Right.
But then you start telling me about these extraterrestrial people putting in your brain and nose and
all other places.
That just, I don't know.
Yeah,
I'm not saying, I'm not going to debunk them, okay? I mean, I can't debunk them, right? Not really. Because I don't know their individual stories. I haven't talked to these people. I don't know their mental health history.
All the things.
But did they find the balls? Did they find little metallic balls in their brains?
We'll see.
I can't. It makes me doubtful.
Well, I'm right there with you. I do believe in aliens, but there are several
I swear
stories.
I've seen an alien.
Well, we definitely feel like we've seen a UFO.
Yeah, an UFO, not an alien.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, so I have seen stories where they find multiple people at once, and it's not really, doesn't seem to be collaborated because they're in so much shock, and you can genuinely see the emotions when they talk about it.
Mm-hmm.
Where they found an actual satellite ship thing, and then there's one guy that's got to know, right? And so he goes and finds out, and they describe this experience, and I'm like, maybe, like, that's more...
I agree. There's stories that I've read that I fully believe in.
I don't know. It's just weird to me, and I'm like, they just kept following you around.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. So, anyways, given her experience with the ENT, that description terrified her so much that she couldn't read any further. So after 14 years of bizarre and terrifying experiences in the night, she was convinced that she was the victim of some unwanted surgery. I don't know. Okay. So Bud, at the time, was working with a pretty large group of abductees and held support groups in his apartment. And the other thing I can't help but think about
What?
is, like, who says Bud's a good guy? Like, you're having group meetings in your apartment, 21-year-old female, you're gonna come to the group meeting.
Well, just, you'll
Maybe
see.
it's a crack house.
No, it's not.
It's a trap house. Trap house. I know there's a song about trap houses out there.
Probably.
Gosh, we used to listen to it.
Trap house.
Yeah. 10, 10, 10, 10, 20, I know to these bitches.
Rag, city, bitch. Rag, city, rag, city.
Pretty sure that's about trap house.
Oh.
I don't know if it is.
I mean, that's about strip club to me.
Yeah, trap house.
Hey.
Poor. Okay,
Yeah.
I don't know. Anyways.
You're probably right. There's a song out there. She's not coming to mind.
Yeah, okay. So, Bud at the time was working with a pretty large group of abductees and held support groups in his apartment. He was also doing one-on-one hypnosis sessions to unlock memories. I'm sorry.
Brittany's losing it already.
I am, because, like, what if you're hypnotized? This could get bad. I mean, and I don't know this bud guy at all.
Well, neither do these people.
Exactly. I
Yeah.
don't know. It's just maybe a different time. I don't know.
It was.
So, according to Bud's wife, Carol Rainey, their apartment was constantly filled with abductees who hoped that Bud could provide some kind of psychological relief. Most of the information from Bud's work came from the hypnosis sessions that he was doing with these people, and that's where he constructed his theory about alien abductions. Carol said they were surveying humankind and intruding their lives in the same way that we intrude into the lives of wildlife that we want to track and follow. Oh God. We track and follow animals so we can eat them. I enjoy all kinds of them. Okay, that sounds bad.
She loves some meat, guys. Hey.
I like eating meat after being cooked. Okay, anyways.
Oh, okay. Moving
This
on.
doesn't get better. Okay. I like hunting. Fishing.
I mean, I enjoy eating things that other people kill. I don't want to kill them, but I'll eat the meat.
Anyways. Carol Rainey was a documentary filmmaker at the time who mostly dealt with scientific subject matter and said, "Before I met Bud, I was a UFO virgin. I had almost no reason to understand what they were other than some mythical thing." So again, I feel like they could totally exploit these people. She's a filmmaker.
She is. She's a documentarian. You'll see why later. But she is actually pretty smart.
Well, the wives usually are.
That's about right.
At the time, she didn't know much about UFOs or aliens, and she had the mind of a documentarian, so she obviously saw that this was a pretty big opportunity, so she started to document Bud's work with the abductees, and she would record anytime she was given permission to do so. Because of that, Bud Hopkins' investigations and his research became some of the most well-documented in the entire field. In later interviews, Carol remembered how excited Bud was after he met Linda and heard her story. She said that Bud was very taken with Linda. He described her as being an attractive woman in her 40s. See?
Yeah.
See?
Yeah.
And he believed that she was very credible and had been traumatized. Unlike many abductees that Bud had dealt with in the past, Linda had been abducted over and over, not just once. Which I feel like that's a common thing that they say whenever I watch this stuff, but it's weird.
Like they go after the same person over and over.
Yeah, like they follow these people around. How do they even choose them?
Well, you'll see here what his theory is on it.
I feel like that would be a great person.
If it was for the reasons that he thinks, you actually would be a great
see?
person.
I told you. I hope they leave me alone, but
Yeah, she said I don't really want to get abducted, but
So, Bud actually suspected that she had a long history of abduction dating back to childhood and was hoping that they could unlock some of those memories through his hypnosis sessions. So they did that. In his first session with Linda, she described a memory from childhood where she was in her bedroom at her parents' house and later said, "What I saw at the age of 8, looking out the bedroom window, was perceived through a child's eyes. To me, at the time, it was something like Casper the Ghost in Christmas lights or a large toy shop. Seeing it again during hypnosis as an adult, I saw a different picture. It was a cone-shaped object approximately 9 feet by 13 feet that glided across and over the rooftops of a multiple dwelling complex. This wasn't a dream, and I wonder what all the other people thought that they saw. I'm sure I wasn't the only one." In the months that followed, Linda went back to Bud's apartment many times to continue with these hypnosis sessions and try to unlock other memories that she had. And it seemed that every time she did one of these sessions, a new piece of the puzzle revealed itself. Eventually, Linda was recalling incidents where she was transported out of her bedroom by beings that she described as short, white, and dark with very intense eyes. In other sessions, she remembered being examined by those entities in ways that made her feel very uncomfortable. In one recorded hypnosis session, she says, "I'm outside, my nightgown is above my head, and I wish they'd put it down. They start saying things to me and I'm yelling, he puts his hand over my mouth, and then I can't talk anymore." Finally, after multiple hypnosis sessions, Linda was able to recall an incident that would become critical to her years of experiences. In the recording, she says, "They're looking up my nose. I can feel it. And then they go to the right side, and they're looking inside there. She also told Bud during the same session that the aliens were examining her eyes and nose with a strong light, and then all of a sudden she felt various parts of her body go numb all at once. So whatever these aliens do to like make these people go numb, obviously it's not super painful. Yeah, we could use that. We could definitely use that.
Yeah. Would be very useful for medical
And yeah.
testing.
Yeah. So
Share it.
yeah, a little bit. I mean, that would be useful. It sounds cheap. The way they hate it. Yeah. She said only her eyes and nose had feeling and that they kept examining her. Then they produced a tray of tools that looked like dental equipment. One instrument was long and had a ball at the end of it. She also remembered them inserting this instrument with the ball on it into one of her nostrils. She said she didn't feel any pain and then told Bud that after that she remembered being led down a series of hallways, and the next thing she knew she was awake in her room at home and her husband Steve was asleep beside her. So up until this point, Linda's experiences were pretty similar to others that Bud had worked with throughout his career. But that all changed on the night of November 30th, 1989. It was a little past 3 a.m. Linda woke up abruptly, feeling terrified. Ooh, it just got cold. Like freezing. At this point in her life, she had actually put special measures in place before she went to bed to try and keep herself from being abducted.
That would be terrible. Like, can you imagine? She
Yeah.
probably felt crazy.
Yeah, I wonder what her husband thought. He knew.
I mean, surely you would talk to your husband about this, right? Especially if you're going to see some abductologist.
I mean, I would think, yeah, but I mean, if this has been going on since childhood and everybody was telling her she was just crazy.
And just having nightmares.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
So anyway, she would double check the locks on the doors and windows before she went in bed, and she slept with a stun gun on her bedside table.
I mean, I don't know what that's going to do to an alien necessarily, but
She said that when she woke up, she felt like she was forgetting something. Then she realized she forgot to look behind the drapes. Suddenly, she felt her body go completely numb, like it always did before she was about to get abducted. She said she sensed presence in the room, just like all the other times. She then felt her body rise off the bed as if she was being lifted from a sleeping position, and it seemed to her that she was floating towards the window, then through the window, and outside into the air. So later during hypnosis, she said, "I'm outside, it's weird, I'm standing up on nothing, and they take me up, all the way up. It opens almost like a clam." For Linda, this experience wasn't much different from all the others. She was taken up into an unfamiliar aircraft and examined by the beings, and then returned to her bed. This happened a lot before. The next day, she called Bud to tell him about her experience, and he told her to come over immediately so that they could do a hypnosis session and document what happened in hypnosis. So she continued her hypnosis sessions with Bud, and she attended the support group pretty regularly in the year that followed, and she was slowly building out her memories and expanding her narrative and being made more informed about what was happening to her. In February of 1991, Bud got a letter that would elevate Linda's case to a level of legitimacy that was very rare seen by UFO researchers. So the envelope arrived at Bud's apartment with the note, "Personal and important," written on the outside. As someone who dealt with very personal and controversial subject matter, it wasn't strange for him to get letters like this, but it was clear as soon as he opened this one that this one was very different. The letter read, "Dear Mr. Hopkins, my partner and I are police officers. We have been in a serious dilemma because of our strict profession and our lack of knowledge on the subject." What followed was a 2-page story that would forever change the lives of Bud, Linda, and Carol, his wife. The letter was signed Police Officers Dan and Richard. It described what was to them a very puzzling experience they had on November 30th, 1989. So, if that date sounds familiar...
It's because that's the same night that Linda went through all of her precautions, with the exception of checking behind the drapes, and she was lifted up and out of her window.
So this obviously adds so much credibility to Linda's story, right? We just talked about this with Ghost Inspector Greg, who is an awesome guest, and if you're not following him on Instagram, you should go do that right now.
Go follow him, guys.
But like he said in that episode, when more than one person experiences or witnesses an experience, a single experience, it then transitions from just a story to a more credible experience.
So, according to the men who sent the letter, they had been on patrol near FDR Drive in Manhattan around 3:30 a.m. whenever they saw, quote, a strange oval hovering over the top of an apartment building 2 or 3 blocks from where they were sitting. They said that they watched as colors emitted by the shape changed from red to orange and then to blue. They said things got considerably stranger whenever the shape lowered towards the building, and they watched as, quote, a little girl or woman wearing a full nightgown was floating in midair in a bright beam of whitish blue looking like an angel. They said that from where they were standing, it looked like 3 smaller beings were directing the woman into the oval. Once the woman or girl was inside of the oval, it changed colors again and then disappeared into the Hudson River and never came back out. They wrote, on top of our fear of getting involved, we were also carrying a load of guilt because we didn't help her, and we don't know what's become of her. So, according to their letter, the officers had spent the previous 15 months debating what they should tell anyone or if they should tell anyone about what they saw. But ultimately, they decided that they needed to tell someone, but not just anyone. Someone who would believe them, which is why they chose to tell Bud. They also wanted to know if the woman that they saw had survived the experience and said someone else had to have seen what happened that morning. By the time he got the letter, Bud had become accustomed to receiving letters of stories from abductees that were unable to be verified by other parties. So it never occurred to him that Linda's abduction could have been witnessed by other people, even in New York City, the city that never sleeps, because it technically does still shut down for a little while. Linda's abduction occurred in the early hours of the morning, so he just assumed that no one else saw it. But since these 2 police officers had witnessed it, then it's very possible that others had seen it as well. And if they were out there, he was determined to find them. So after he got the letter from Dan and Richard, he called Linda, and the 2 of them met later that afternoon at his apartment. The letter was truly remarkable for a few reasons. For one, the letter appeared to corroborate the account given to him by Linda a year and a half earlier. And they also correctly identified the approximate time and location of the abduction. They also identified the shape of the mysterious aircraft and the color it emitted, and even the correct color of the nightgown that Linda was wearing that night. So every detail that was shared by Linda was now backed by these 2 policemen, who, by all accounts, were credible witnesses. At first, Linda didn't know what to make of this. She said maybe they had seen someone else get abducted who lived near her. She just couldn't seem to wrap her mind around the fact that her own account of what happened was now being verified by other people who also saw it happen.
But why? That's what you want. I
Yes.
want to seem crazy.
Yes.
And she even said earlier, like, somebody else had to see it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, not about that particular one, but...
I mean, I'm just thinking, like she said, that this has been going on for years and nobody's ever believed her. That's probably another reason that added shock that someone else actually does believe her or witnessed it, you know?
Yeah, that's weird.
Yeah.
Because my thought is like, oh, so she's making it all up.
If she doesn't believe that somebody else saw her.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Bud had to tell Linda, like, yes, it's possible that they witnessed an abduction of someone else, but it's much more likely that they saw you get abducted. And if that's the case, then these 2 men were an invaluable asset in proving the validity of experiences that people had with aliens.
Bud insisted that it was incredibly important that they do everything they could to keep their account of what happened that night separate from Linda's. He laid out a strategy where if either of the 2 men got in contact with him again, he would try to get their account of what happened on tape or at the very least written down. He stressed to Linda that if either of the men reached out to her, do not speak to them. Call me or Carol so that neither of the stories were tainted. So he was doing some true investigative work here, and it shows that his intent was pure. Meaning it wasn't a publicity stunt. He had pure intentions to further validate not only his research and investigations of aliens and alien abductions, but as a whole in his field of study. So despite Linda agreeing to his strategy just 2 weeks after he got the letter, Bud got a call from Linda, who was very upset, saying that Dan and Richard had shown up at her house just a few hours earlier and asked to speak with her. How'd they know it was her?
Well, my thing is, you knew you're not supposed to talk to him. You let them in your own apartment. Like, that was your choice.
Yeah. She told Bud that she asked to see their IDs to verify it was them, and they showed her gold badges through the peephole of her door. She said she was concerned because they were detectives and felt that she couldn't turn them away. No, screw that. I didn't do nothing wrong. According to Linda, one of them, Richard, was extremely nice and polite, but the other one, Dan, not so much. She said he seemed angry and hostile and that she was worried that he may assault her if she wasn't fully cooperative with them.
Okay.
Another reason to kick him out of your house. So Richard explained to her that they wanted to know how she was able to levitate 12 stories from the street out of her window. He said, "We've been feeling pretty bad about what happened," and then asked her if there was anything they could do to help. She responded by saying that actually there was. She then told him to contact Bud Hopkins, and apparently that request changed the tone of the discussion. They both made it very clear to her that their work was of a very sensitive nature, and they wanted to remain anonymous. They probably work for the government.
That's definitely a thought.
So Linda told them that she understood and suggested that perhaps they could record their account of the event on a videotape and send it to Bud at the same address where they sent the letter. She said Richard looked like he was going to break down and cry, but in the end they agreed to make the recording. So you want to stay anonymous, but you're going to record your video?
Well, just on like a cassette.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, not recorded like video, but just a cassette recording.
Oh, okay. So the letter Bud received about the event was one thing, but a recording of it in Dan and Richard's own voices would have been something else entirely. It would have added a huge level of credibility.
Which is true. I mean, definitely would have.
Yeah, it's just, I don't know. There's a lot.
We haven't even gotten to a lot yet, man.
Yeah. So there were still questions that would need to be resolved if their evidence was going to be believed by the public. Who exactly were Dan and Richard? Carol said later that the entrance of Dan and Richard into Linda's story was like a shot of adrenaline. So whether they were policemen or agents, no one knew. All they knew was that Richard had identified them both as police officers in his letter, but then when they went to visit Linda at her apartment, they identified themselves as detectives. So who are they really? I don't know.
We're not sure yet, but we're going to find out.
Now, determined to find out the true identities of both Richard and Dan, Bud spent the next few weeks going from one precinct to the other to see if any officers matched the descriptions that Linda provided of these two men, and if someone at the front desk said yes, Bud left a note stating it was urgent and that they needed to get in touch with him ASAP. And expressed how important the work was to humanity and their participation was vital.
He's doing some legwork, man.
Obviously, he was extremely passionate about his work, and he wanted to be able to share it with the world in a credible way. He also seemed to be concerned with what aliens actually wanted with the human race. So he never got a response from any of the precincts that he left notes with, but a few days after visiting one of the last precincts in Manhattan, he received an audio tape in the mail. Bud did not recognize the voices from the recording, but the man on the recording claimed to be Richard, the one that sent the letter to him, and one of the men who paid a visit to Linda's. He said, "I suppose Linda's already spoken to you about our unexpected visit to her apartment one evening. Indeed, it was very uncomfortable to say in the very least. The subject matter was the strangest ever in my line of work." He was very sympathetic to Linda's situation and said, "I understand how important this is to you, but I can't get involved and neither can my partner. What happened left us all victims of circumstance. After actually seeing her and speaking to her, we could see just how frightened and how sincere she was. Please respect the importance of our credibility at work. We just can't be identified. We'd be laughed at." So they were afraid of what the public, especially coworkers, would have to say and how they would act if either of them came forward publicly with their account of what they saw.
Well, and I feel like that's a valid concern for them at like the day and age that they're in. I could see that, you know?
I don't know.
You don't think so?
Oh, listen, I heard some crazy stories. I've been involved in crazy stories when it comes to this kind of stuff. And you can't make it up.
Well,
you couldn't make it up if you tried.
I'm just saying, it was a different time.
I know, but if it really happened, there's all these people around to see it happen, you can't make it up. You know?
Yes.
For Bud, the audio recording was an equal mix of excitement and frustration. On one hand, it seemed to prove that Linda was telling the truth about her abduction on November 30th. But on the other hand, it was all meaningless if Richard and Dean weren't willing to go on record about what they witnessed. So what he needed to corroborate Linda's story was additional witnesses. And, to his surprise, that's exactly what he got in the following weeks. So as he mentioned earlier, by the time he met Linda in 1989, Bud Hopkins already had a large presence when it came to the media and UFOs and aliens. He did a lot of talk shows and gave commentary on his work. Bringing Linda into the fold only made him a more compelling guest. And soon they were appearing on Oprah, Geraldo.
Yeah, apparently it was like a big show, you know, like late 80s, late 90s. Because, you know, talk shows were big then.
Yeah.
That's when my dream came alive. I wanted to be a talk show host.
I remember that. And other big-name talk shows. The high-profile appearances resulted in several more witnesses coming forward to Bud and reporting witnessing Linda's abduction on November 30th. Ultimately, he collected 22 additional statements from what he believed to be independent and reliable witnesses from all walks of life.
That's a lot of eyewitnesses.
It is a lot.
Yeah.
These additional statements seemed to sway many people who weren't sure what to think of Linda's story, including his wife, Carol. She said Linda's case was fascinating to me because there were numerous people who had seen her be abducted from her window and up into that craft. So like the letter from Richard and Dan, all of these additional statements seemed to completely corroborate her story. One woman told Bud, "I don't believe in flying saucers, but it was a clear view. It was a glowing, shiny, I just kept staring at it." So others recalled seeing a woman float out of her 12-story apartment building and hover above the ground. Some just kept it real and said they were scared. We don't know what was going on. And another thing to point out here is that obviously most people would remember seeing something as wild as a woman levitating 12 stories high.
Yeah.
But what made the incident that much more memorable is that the abduction coincided with a blackout across that specific neighborhood.
Ooh, interesting.
So why did they call the police?
Oh, man. Well, what are you going to say, though? Hey, there's a lady, like, literally...
Well, I mean, if nothing else, you could be like, hey, I don't know what's going on. This lady, like, I don't know if she's falling. I don't know if she's
jumping.
Trying to, like, commit suicide.
Yeah.
Like, but she might need help.
That's true.
You don't have to sound crazy.
Well, I guess truly with this many eyewitnesses, you would think that somebody would have called and reported seeing something strange, but I guess not.
Yeah.
One witness, called Janet, was driving towards the Brooklyn Bridge. She had just stopped to light a cigarette when all of the lights went out. She said, quote, "My first impression was that they were making a movie." She said she remembered thinking, what did they do to the bridge? It didn't look real. But what she remembered most was the lights emanating from the object in the sky. She said to Bud, first it looked like an explosion almost because it was so red and white. That's what caught me. And then the red subdued and it got white. Then I saw these balls. They all just tumbled out. From a distance, I thought it was a little girl. So that's now the second time that someone mentions thinking that it was a young girl. Another witness who was delivering newspapers at the time also remembered the blackout particularly because it allowed him to see the craft and the lights in the sky with much more clarity. He said, "I've been working at the New York Post delivering newspapers out in Queens for almost 20 years, and on the way back, I could take the bridge. I was confronted with the blackout, the truck dying, and all of a sudden, I saw a bunch of lights in front of me. I didn't know what I was looking at, and then when I saw what it was, it scared the heck out of me. And then I saw a woman coming out a window." For Bud, the witness statements were the latest pieces of the puzzle that he believed would finally confirm beyond any reasonable doubt that aliens had visited the Earth and were abducting humans for some kind of experimental purposes. Little did Bud know, these statements were just the beginning of a much larger story that would end up having personal and very serious consequences. So, after almost 2 years of working with Linda, Bud had a very thorough account of her abductions, mostly through her hypnotic regression sessions. The statements from Richard and Dan and all of the other witnesses who came forward. But by 1991, the question that remained was, what now? What are we going to do with all of this? They still had not been able to publicly identify their two most credible and reliable witnesses, Richard and Dan, and the other witness statements didn't seem like quite enough proof to sway skeptics. Those people wanted 100% undeniable proof. And one day in 1991, Linda remembered a particularly significant event that she neglected to tell Bud in the 2 years of working together.
So, during their various interviews and casual conversations, she had told Bud about how she noticed that bump on her nose that really seemed to have started this whole ordeal. But what she didn't mention was that just a few weeks before her abduction, on November 30th, Linda went to visit her niece, Lisa Bear, a podiatrist surgeon in Poughkeepsie.
Yeah, Poughkeepsie.
So she was a foot doctor. So Linda told her niece what the doctor said about the nose surgery and went on to tell her that she was having frequent nosebleeds. Seeing that what she told her niece was causing her distress, Lisa suggested that she take an x-ray of her nose to put her mind at ease about potential illnesses. So they did just that. And what they discovered was absolutely shocking. According to Linda, the only x-ray machine that was in her niece's office was the one she had used to x-ray people's feet, meaning that she had to get down on the ground and stick her head under the machine in order to get an x-ray.
I mean, I guess you gotta do what you gotta do.
Whatever. Like, an x-ray machine goes all over.
Brittany's like, whatever. It was weird.
So after Lisa took the x-ray, Linda had to rush out of the office to catch the train, so she wasn't able to see it prior to leaving the office. A week had passed without any word from Lisa, so Linda assumed that the image didn't show anything of significance. But years later, in discussing the x-ray with Bud, Lisa said, "It's not a perfect picture, but when I developed it, I was stunned when I saw this thing in the side of her nostril." She also said, "I was afraid to use the phone to call her and tell her about it. The x-ray shows what is very clearly a human head in the profile, with a focus on the front of the head, and in one of the nasal cavities there appears to be a small metal coil.
Ooh.
It looks similar to a spring with a cap on both ends." In his book about the case, Bud described the object as a complex radio-optic metallic object. So this was proof that she had some weird shit inside of her nose.
Mm-hmm.
So to Bud, this was the exact kind of solid, undeniable proof that he needed to sway the people out there that were skeptical of Linda's story and prove his theory about aliens interfering with humanity.
What do you think? Would that sway you?
No.
I agree. I don't think it's quite enough.
I see inmates that shove crap everywhere.
Yeah.
So I don't know. But before they could celebrate the find and go public, another incident with Richard and Dan sent them into a different and very scary direction.
Ooh.
It's like the Men in Black.
Yeah. Pretty much.
They swear there's real ones. There's like theories about it, conspiracy theories about the Men in Black.
We should
That
cover
work.
that.
Yeah, I'm down.
Coming soon.
The Men in Black.
Kate.
So, since her first meeting with the mysterious Richard and Dan almost a full year earlier, Linda was sure that they were following and surveying her to the point that she started carrying a gun for protection. Every so often, she would be out and see a man who resembled Dan either following her or waiting around the corner. And she was convinced that they had bugged her apartment. Bud also started to believe that the FBI was tracking their movements and keeping a close eye on them.
Paranoid.
Yeah. He even went as far as borrowing what his wife Carol described as very high-end equipment from a friend who worked in security, which he used to sweep his and Linda's apartment for bugs. And FYI, they never found any. So things really boiled over in late April of 1991, not long after Bud first saw the x-ray of Linda's nose. At this point, he insisted that Linda wear a weird recording device just in case she had any unexpected run-ins with Richard or Dan. On the afternoon of April 29th, Bud was at home when he got a call from a very frantic Linda. According to him, Linda claimed that Richard and Dan abducted her. She went on to say that they eventually let her go free. She said that she put her son Johnny on the school bus that morning, and she was walking to the grocery store when she heard someone call out her name. She turned and saw it was Richard, who was smiling as he approached her. And just behind him, in a black Mercedes, she could see Dan. She said that Richard was pleasant, and he asked if she would mind going for a drive with him so that they could talk.
No thanks.
But there was no way she was going to get in a car with him, so she declined and turned to walk away. She had barely stepped off the curb to cross the street when she felt a very strong hand grip her arm and pull her in the direction of the car.
Nope.
Yeah.
Mm-mm. Get off of me.
Where's the gun, sister?
Yeah, really, reach in and grab it, man.
She said Richard sort of twirled me around with my back facing him and then marched toward the car and pushed me into the open door of the back seat. I don't know about you, but yeah, Men in Black. Okay, they just need the little pin with the light.
For sure. But hopefully with the real Men in Black, there's no, big cockroaches. Blah.
Or shooting people's heads off.
Yeah, right.
For the big
Talking dog I'm down with, though.
Yeah. Talking dog. In her call with Bud immediately after her release from the incident, she described super bizarre behavior that Richard and Dan both displayed. She said, "He told me to take my shoes off. They wanted to see my feet."
What?
Yeah.
Weird. I'm like,
Did they take pictures? "I think they wanted to know how many toes I had." She went on to say that she got the impression that they suspected she was some kind of alien human hybrid and they were looking for proof. She said that moment she had the sense to start the recorder that Bud had given her. On the recording, you could hear an argument between Linda and an unidentified man. On the tape, the man is accusing Linda of recording the conversation, and she says, "No, it's not recording." But what's more interesting here is what's not on the recording.
of course.
Yeah, it's always like that.
What is it?
So what's not on the recording is the moment that Linda pulled her gun from her purse and pointed it at the two men. Linda said this caused Dan to pull over on the side of the road, and they let her out. She then ran home and called Bud immediately. After hearing Linda's story, Bud was like, "You need to come over here. Are you okay? We should also do a hypnosis session to see if we can document some details of the event that may help us finally be able to identify these two men."
Wait, okay, so basically she's saying, like, they pulled her in the car just to look at her toes and make sure that she was not, like, some hybrid version.
And then she pulled a gun in a closed vehicle with two men.
And that's the only part that she didn't get recorded.
I don't know. It's just weird. It's just weird.
Strange, yeah. As luck would have it, Linda did recall some details about the car. She said it wasn't a Mercedes, but instead a Rolls Royce with diplomatic plates. She said she also recalled seeing a decal on the window with the United Nations logo on it. Yeah. So by this time, Bud and Linda had quickly decided that Richard and Dan were not police officers or detectives like they were originally thought to be. Bud now strongly suspected that they held a position of significant authority beyond your average police officer. And now he wondered if it was possible that they were private security for some diplomat, or maybe a member of the United Nations. In the days that followed, Bud and Linda reviewed video footage held at the United Nations building, and in one, Linda claimed to recognize one of the men in the background as Dan. The man in question was in the company of Javier Perez de Cuar, who was the Secretarial General of the United Nations.
Like,
I mean, that's a pretty big deal.
I mean, I guess.
If these claims
Why do they care about her toes?
I don't know. I mean, I guess aliens have different looking hands and feet, you know?
I don't know. It's just weird.
It's just weird. So, in the weeks that followed, Bud, Linda, and now Bud's assistant, Peter, set out to try and to find the identities of the man in the video and what his relation was to the Secretarial General of the United Nations. But their inquiries at the UN and the UN securities buildings, which included Bud and Linda posing as a married couple, ultimately went nowhere. Like, obviously, right?
Yeah.
But a short time later, Bud got a letter from Dan that shed some light on the situation. All letters, right?
Yeah. So Peter said they explained to Bud that they were not police officers but federal agents acting as protection for a very high-ranking and well-known diplomat. But still.
Yeah, but still.
And now they came to the conclusion that the important man in question was Perez de Cuar. For Bud, he felt like all the pieces were falling into place. He was finally onto something big, and as a result, the relevant government agencies had taken notice and were now on their trail, making sure that Bud and his associates didn't expose anything that would create mass hysteria.
Which you kind of understand, like, not wanting to create a panic, but I don't know.
Yeah. So, knowing that they were being followed and even in potential danger should have maybe, I don't know, made them want to take it down a notch.
Right.
But that was not who Bud was. For him, it was exciting, and it was proof that he was on the verge of making the biggest discovery of his career and something that the world at that point in time had never seen before.
Yeah.
So Linda hadn't just been abducted and had a metallic device implanted inside of her nose, but now she'd been experimented on and possibly even sexually assaulted by aliens. And now maybe the aliens were trying to create some type of hybrid species. So there were also now terrestrial threats to worry about. They were worried about Richard, Dan, and other high-positioned individuals who were trying to silence them. So as years went by, Linda's story continued to expand, and eventually she even incorporated her son, Johnny, who she believed was also being abducted.
See, this is where you start to lose me.
Yeah. So over time, Bud had gotten closer to Johnny and wanted to help him understand his own experiences, just like he had with Linda. But Carol remembered one night when it occurred to Bud that the aliens were not only interested in individuals, but possibly bloodlines.
So that's his theory.
So if you really look into aliens and what they want from us, it would make sense that they would want to study our bloodlines in order to understand what happens as we go on. Carol said Bud was wiping his eyes in full understanding of what Linda had talked about, that the aliens were also traumatizing her children. She went on to become concerned that Bud was so emotionally attached, and her alarm bells went off. She felt that Bud risked losing his objectivity. And guys, you have to remember that Linda has now become a constant in Bud's life. She's a huge part of his life. And now Carol, his actual wife, is seeing this.
Yeah.
So, I mean, she's being pragmatic. She's like, hey, I think we're a little too deep into this, you know? Like, a child's involved now. We really need to think about what we're doing.
And she was right.
Yeah. But, like, where's her husband this whole time? Is she, like, a stay-at-home mom? Her husband doesn't care what she does during the day?
There's literally no talk about her husband except for that one time when she mentions when she woke back up in bed next to him. Other than that, it does not mention him in the stories.
Yeah.
And, I mean, you would think that he could possibly have been a witness to some of this, but never once did he.
I don't know. I feel like if I just left first thing in the morning, or if I was in a moment of distress and I went straight to this other man, my husband would be like, whoa.
Yeah.
I don't know. So, Carol had never really been a believer in the same way that Bud was, but she was always willing to give him and the people who came into him the benefit of the doubt. She especially gave them the benefit of the doubt when there was evidence that supported their claim. But after years of working with Linda, Carol noticed a change in Bud that was deeply concerning to her. She said it seemed like he lost the ability to think critically when it came to Linda. Carol had grown up in a heavily devout Christian sect that genuinely was borderline being a cult. And I say that just to point out that she was all too familiar with what unconditional blind faith can cause. So, as a teenager, she had gotten thrown out of her parents' house and excommunicated from their entire community because they said that she was asking too many questions about their religion, which they obviously took as her threatening their entire structure. She said, after a year of my asking increasingly unwelcome questions, my father stood in the middle of the living room and said, "You are no longer my daughter." So, despite that experience, and probably because of it, Carol devoted her entire life to science and reason and even prided herself on her own skepticism. So at first, she was highly fascinated by Linda, her story, and the evidence behind it. She said she found Linda to be engaging, personable, dynamic, and exactly the kind of person that any documentary filmmaker would want on camera.
So she just fit all the right pieces.
But at the same time, her story did seem credible in the beginning. There were almost 24 witnesses who corroborated her story. She saw the letters from Richard and Dan with her own eyes that seemed to support the belief that Linda and Bud were being monitored. But she said after a few years, there was something about the story that seemed to nag at her. She said it felt like every time Linda went out to the grocery store, something new and strange happened to her. The story just kept on rolling.
Yep, never ending story.
Yeah. And had Linda's story been contained, meaning had it only affected Linda, it wouldn't have bothered her so much. But Bud was now so deeply ingrained into what at this point seemed to be a very bizarre conspiracy that it not only threatened his professional reputation, but also his physical health. According to Carol, the thing that really pushed her over the edge was when Linda started incorporating Johnny into the conspiracy, which was her son. So she didn't have a clear plan or strategy at first, but she went with her gut and did what felt most natural to her as a documentarian. She went back to the very beginning, reviewed all of the evidence piece by piece. And remember that from the moment Linda entered her and Bud's lives, Carol had been filming everything. And Bud had been recording their calls with permission, of course. So there were countless hours of telephone conversations, group sessions, and hypnosis sessions that documented almost every second of Linda and Bud's relationship. The first thing that jumped out at Carol was Linda's demeanor during the hypnosis sessions. She said that after years with Bud, she had seen countless people hypnotized and was familiar with the drowsy, incoherent state that they fell into during the hypnosis process. She said Linda's hypnosis sessions were different. Her words about this were, she didn't sound the way others did when they were deep down. She had a clear, coherent narrative. I just didn't believe that she was under hypnosis. The other thing that emerged during her review of the years of tapes was the way Linda's story took shape throughout the years. Carol said to her it almost seemed to be too perfect. And it occurred to Carol that whenever Bud tried to direct his attention somewhere else, Linda always seemed to have a way to reel him back in with some outrageous detail or event. And to Carol, by the time that Bud's book about the incident was published in 1996, the story had become so outrageously unrealistic that it seemed impossible that anyone would believe it. She said it was paced like a thriller, full of otherworldly treachery, forbidden love, UFOs over Manhattan, lusty and dangerous Secret Service agents, more forbidden love, an X-ray alien implant, and her abduction into a spacecraft. So Carol got to a place where she was just like, seriously? Like, come on. During the early phase of her investigation into all of the tapes and evidence of Linda's story, she kept her thoughts and her activities to herself because she didn't want to upset her husband or interfere with his work, because she obviously had a deep level of respect for him. But after going over things, she ended up coming to some eye-opening conclusions. She decided she would no longer keep this to herself, especially because there is now a kid involved. But if Carol expected Bud to be at all receptive to her critique, she was about to be very disappointed.
She said at that point, I was kind of seeing a lot of these stories as being made up, invented. Bud didn't pick up on it because she was delivering material that he so badly wanted for his new book. Bud had invested years of time, money, and emotion into Linda's story. And as far as Carol could tell, he needed that story to be true at this point. Not only for his new book, but because he had built so much of his theory around everything that happened to Linda. He seemed to have lost himself in Linda's story. Carol knew that if she wanted Bud to be able to come back to himself, the man she knew who looked at the scientific side of everything and who wanted to go about things in the right way, she was going to have to attack the evidence that corroborated the story, particularly the witness statements and the letters from Richard and Dan. Those were the pieces of evidence that really got Bud excited and encouraged. To Carol, it seemed unlikely that all 22 witnesses were lying, but whenever she went back and reviewed the interviews that Bud had conducted with them, it seemed that Bud had more influence on those witness statements than he meant to. Most of the witnesses admitted that they hadn't gotten a great look at what they later claimed was a UFO, and that many of them weren't really liable to begin with. One example was an elderly woman who said that she saw the abduction from her window, but also said that her view would have been obstructed by multiple large objects. So basically, she wasn't really able to see it. Her view simply was not clear enough to have truly witnessed the abduction, and that at the same time, Bud's enthusiasm could have easily acted as confirmation bias, which basically would drive these interviewees to provide him with information they thought he wanted to hear instead of what they actually saw. Lastly, there was the source of the witnesses themselves. All of the witnesses had only reached out to Bud 2 years or more after the abduction had taken place, and only after the story had gone public and they saw it on Oprah or other large TV shows. There was also the matter of the letters from Richard and Dan. Their position of the story gave credence to the belief that these large government agencies were trying to undermine his research, and he thought that the agents had been harassing Bud and Linda for years. The problem for Carol with these letters was that the letters had been typed out on a typewriter, so there was no actual way of knowing who had actually written them or where they really came from. But one day, she was sorting through the evidence and she stumbled across the letter claiming to be written by Javier Perez de Cuellar, who, if you remember, was the Secretary of the United Nations. And it included a handwritten signature that she could use to compare to Linda's handwriting, which they obviously had samples of. So Carol takes these to a handwriting specialist, and among other things, the handwriting analysis concluded that the sample from Linda and the signature of the supposed Secretary General of the United Nations were virtually identical.
So now let's keep in mind that technically handwriting analysis is not exactly considered in the same way that scientific evidence is. So in 2023, Carol told a documentary crew that the person who replicated the signature of de Cuellar is the same person who's written the letters from Richard and the letters from Dan, which is Linda. So Richard is an invention of Linda, and so is Dan. So after all, Carol had learned, she came to the ultimate conclusion that Linda had read Bud's book and knew exactly what she was looking for. That made it easy for her to manipulate him, especially after he became very emotionally and financially involved in the case. Carol confronted Bud with everything, including the handwriting analysis, but she said he refused to believe anything that she presented to him. And years later, after the book was published, he continued to support Linda and defend her story.
Well,
so after the publication of Witnessed, which was the book about Linda's alleged abduction story, Bud and Linda continued working together to promote the book, appearing on talk shows, at conventions, all around the country. So during that period, Bud and Carol's relationship continued to decline until they finally got divorced in 2006. Carol said, quote, "I felt that Bud had lost his objectivity. I don't know if it was through the Linda case or if it was earlier than that. I couldn't respect what I heard him do to people who were vulnerable. I was literally sick of the whole business, and the only thing I could do was to speak out about it."
I mean, it is what it is.
Yeah. After his divorce from Carol, Bud started a relationship with UFOologist and abductologist named Leslie Keene, who shared his interests, and they remained together until Bud passed away in 2011 from cancer. So for more than a decade, Bud touted the major significance of Linda's case, but he did eventually move on to other subjects, and Linda faded away back into her regular life. In the years since, she's been on a handful of TV shows about alien abductions and gives interviews every now and then. To this day, she stands by her story and maintains that every aspect of it is true to the best of her recollection. After her divorce from Bud in 2006, Carol continued working to debunk Linda's story. And she was determined to expose Linda as a fraud, which you can definitely see how she could be resentful and want to make this a priority.
I mean, yeah, you kind of get it, you know.
Yeah. She published her investigation of the story on her own website, and since it's been republished on many other internet platforms. So in the years after, she became a regular speaker at skeptic events and frequently gave interviews on the subject of alien abduction hoaxes, including those in which her former husband was involved in.
She did not care, man.
She was like, yeah, no.
Yeah.
On September 17th, 2023, after a period of illness, Carol passed away at St. Anne's Hospital in Fall River, Massachusetts, of natural causes. Recently, when asked why Carol worked so hard to refute her claims, she told a reporter, "She's a bitch. She used my case and my family as a tool to get even with Bud."
Wow. Okay, Linda.
Listen, Linda.
Listen, Linda.
So this is where we're going to leave you. We know what we believe. I think y'all probably know what we believe.
Probably so.
But what do you believe? And how do you feel about aliens in general?
Yeah. Okay, I want to know what everyone thinks about, not long ago, there was a whole bunch of stuff, especially on TikTok and social medias, about how there was an intergalactic war going on. People would come out and say they saw lights flashing, hear stuff, but could literally not actually see anything in the sky. They all thought it was like an alien conspiracy. What do you think about that? Did you see any of it?
No, I haven't tried to watch that.
No.
But I mean, you can get reflections and stuff from space. I mean,
Most of it was literally that it sounded like
probably SpaceX.
it was all over the world. I don't know.
Yeah.
But yeah, do you guys believe in aliens? All right, I'm Ryan,
And I'm Brittany.
and this is
Pure Malice. Into the paranormal. When true crime isn't enough, we cross into the unknown.
until next time, guys.
See ya.
Bye.